Hello everybody and welcome to another marvelous Ramble video. This time I'm going to be talking about Dandara Trials of Fear Edition, or as I'm going to refer going forward, Dandara Trials of Fear, or simply Dandara. So, originally this was supposed to be my video on the Outer Worlds. I had planned that, I even said that on various podcasts that I'm on, and that was the plan. But then, like 2 weeks ago or something like that, the Outer Worlds Twitter account, and I think even Obsidian and stuff like that, had put out a tweet the day before I was gonna record. A new patch is coming at the end of October, and that patch is actually live by the time this video is live. So I was like, well, I kind of want to wait till play that patch and record it at the best version I can do. And just to clarify, I'm recording it off the Switch version because that's the version I played. And so I was like, well, what do I do then? What game do I talk about? I didn't really have anything planned. And so right after I beaten the Outer Worlds, I started playing this game, Dandara. And I bought this game on a lark because I was tipped at work, which I'm not supposed to happen, but whatever, it happened. And I used it to buy an eShop card, and there were some indie games on sale. And I had, like, sometimes you have the dilemma where, like, you have $6 left and you don't know what to do with it, so you just buy a random game, and that was this. And there was one word on there that made me buy the game. One word, and that was Metroidvania. And something in me was like, well, and I looked at the screenshots of the game, and I'm like, well, this looks interesting. And I didn't really look at anything else. I didn't look at any reviews, and I was like, well, it's only $6. And it's money I didn't spend, so I bought it. And needless to say, Dandara Trials of Fear is perhaps the most unique Metroidvania I've played. And when I say that, that doesn't mean it's the best, my favorite Metroidvania, or it's the genre-defining Metroidvania. But it's unique in terms of its presentation, from its presentation to its story, to its mobility, bosses, area, how you traverse, everything about it was completely unique. Sure, at the end of the day, it's a Metroidvania, so you have this map, interconnected world that you travel around, find treasure, fight bosses, go through these different areas to ultimately fight a boss, and sometimes a hidden boss if you meet certain criteria. And that kind of I was just in the mood for that kind of game. But Dandara is very different. And this is what, and number one, I'm going to talk about a little bit of the story without spoiling anything, because I've beaten this game at the time of this recording. Dandara is a game that's, if I can sum it up into one word, it's imagination. This game loves to live on the echelon of big ideas. And what I mean that is through how you travel, through the game's story, even down to its weapons. It's all about imagination and creation and intention coming together to form this world that you play in. And I think that's awesome. I'm personally, when I'm reading novels or comic books or any kind of stuff, I don't mind, your grounded realism stuff. I don't. There's some really good stuff there, but I'm a huge fan of these larger than life concepts that basically kind of like, they're just within the grasp of our mindset, but they're a little bit too further out there. They're abstract concepts. And I found that interesting while playing the game, because the game is very much dealing in abstracts for the most part. And that's what kind of hooked me in as I started playing. As you go further along, certain things will move because the power of music is moving them. Or you have these missiles that are through will or something like that, and I just love that idea, and they commit to it from start to finish. Everything is this kind of that you're seeing the world through a different perspective, and that kind of goes in with the story, where you play as Dandara, where you were born at like this creation pit, because creation and intention lived in perfect balance until this golden idea showed up, and that's what it's called in the game. And basically a cancer in this world starts growing and corrupting the salt, and the salt in this game is I can, if I'm gonna akin to anything, it's like the Force. It ebbs and flows with all of us. We're all connected and binded by the salt, and that's being corrupted by this entity, this empire, this evil empire that's kind of basically authoritarianism, destroying art, destroying music, destroying everything that's not that they consider cancerous. Kind of realistic to what we're witnessing today in certain parts of the world, and even in my own backyard, which is terrifying. Which to me makes me playing Dandara feel even greater, because I feel like I can make a difference, even though I'm really not in this way. But that sense of empowerment that a video game has, I think, is wonderful. And I think the story is really great in that. Like, I think this is an updated version, so they added story elements, but there are pieces of journals you can find that, like, tell stories, or, like, little anecdotes that said, like, little things, like, this library is filled with this. And it doesn't mean anything in the larger concept of the universe that you're playing in this game, but it's just those little things that ground it. So, like, and that's I think that's the perfect balance with this game story, is that while you are floating through this different sort of slide dimension where you're seeing the normal world through this very different perspective, when you go to these areas and you like touch a certain thing, that kind of grounds it, that you're just, to me, at least that's how I see it. And I think that speaks through movement. And as you've seen by watching this video, movement in this game is very different from any Metroidvania game I've played. And maybe this is on me, and at first I was a little turned off on it, because I didn't know what to think. But movement in this game is very weird. I was kind of expecting traditional, which I shouldn't, considering I shouldn't have, but that's foolish on me. But traditional, you're not going to move left or right in this game. Instead, you can only bounce off certain segments of the salt. You can't, and that means you can't even go to certain areas you can't access, because you can't reach there by the salt. And I found it really fun. Like, sometimes, and you'll see it a couple of times, sometimes I found it cumbersome, because I felt like if I land here, well, this enemy will hit me here. But for the most part, I found it unique to travel through. It was like I was teleporting, floating through this side dimension. And it felt like oddly freeing, even though it's possibly more restrictive in terms of its movement capabilities than, say, like other Metroidvania games I've played. And I didn't know how to feel about that, but the more I played it, it still allows you that level of expressive movement, because they designed the world that way, and that's good level design. Sometimes you can design how a character... Sometimes I've played games where they design how a character moves, but the levels they put in, or the areas they put the character in, they just don't mesh with it well, and it's not a fun experience to play, which is the opposite. Like, it's like, you know, they had this idea, and they formed it around this other idea, and it coalesces into this beautiful set of movements. And that even goes further beyond as you get further power-ups. Like, I think at the end of this video, you'll see, you get this, at the end of the first area, rather, you'll get this upgrade that's called from this thing called the Creation Stone. That all it is allowing you to hop on these special pillars to go from point A to point B. That sounds boring, but you call something a Creation Stone that allows you to launch further through the power of ideas. I think that's so cool. I think it's wonderful. And there's other upgrades that kind of exist to that idea. So, in a short, while Dandara is restrictive in where she can move and how she can move, at the same time, the world is designed for her to move free-flowing in her own unique way, which I think sticks to the overall game's message. And even in combat situations, and combat is entirely unique, because you're constantly having to move from up to down versus left to right. And sometimes in Metroidvanias you need to get double jumps, but here you're only restricted to up or down. You can obviously go diagonal left, diagonal right, but you're not going to be able to go left or right, which makes which makes combat situations even more, I think, entertaining, because you have to think about it. You can't, and having played this game, you can't bull rush this game. You have to take your time. You have to understand what you're going into, your plan of attack. It's almost as if, like, Dandara has to be careful what she's doing, because otherwise the corruption will get her. The corruption will capture her. And I don't know if that was the intention of the developers, but I honestly found that that's what she was doing. So that being said, and before I get into negatives, I have to give credit to the music. The music in this game is so beautiful. It is like there are points where it's hauntingly calm, and so serene and perfect. But when it wants to set that moment of like fear and danger, and I'm gonna spoil this a little bit. I don't show it off in this video because it was a little further along than I wanted to record to. There's a world you go into after you beat the second boss called the Hidden Realms, and to describe it, it's basically the Upside Down from Stranger Things. To judge anything, it's this it's a parallel world that you can go into, and it's basically hell, and everything's black. Everything's black or blue, and there's red spikes everywhere. But the music that plays in there is just, along with the visuals, is just spikingly like, I want to get out of here. Every fiber in my being doesn't want to be here, and I think that's wonderful. Like, I know that sounds weird considering the circumstances, but I figure using that as an example would help understand what I'm getting across. It sets the tone very well, and it works in cohesion with everything around it. And I think that goes for the whole game in general, that even though like some might see this game as just another Metroidvania, another indie Metroidvania game, like there's hundreds of those, and unfortunately in today's era, like, I feel like I didn't hear anyone talk about this game because of that, because it just looks like it, and probably people just looked at it and didn't give a look. Yeah, you can find reviews on it, but I feel like there should be more awareness of this game because of what it does with the visuals, its story, its music. I honestly truly believe that it's such a wonderful piece of art that I didn't think was possible in certain aspects. In true to form to any Metroidvania, exploration is not woefully, I'm sorry, that's the wrong word, is rightfully rewarded. There, just to give an example, I had to cut it because of the video, but initially the first area, which you should be seeing by now, is this artist area, this little city area. But if you go off in the beginning area to the further right, you can go off a little bit. The game still has those moments where like you're restricted from going to these parts until you have certain upgrades, so you can't, it's like any true Metroidvania, right? But if you manage to go off around and go around and just explore, like, oh, am I supposed to go this way? Then you find yourself, like, you get an upgrade, and I think that's so cool, and that speaks even further into the game. The game absolutely rewards you for going off the beaten path and trying something that you didn't think would work. The game is very expressive with that. In fact, in the Trials of Fear update that was free, in the Hidden Realms, there were these 3 hidden characters, and I won't go too much into this, but there was these 3 characters that were added, and I thought they were like final boss kind of territory level, in all honesty, but they weren't. They were just an extra challenge that unlocks the true final boss, which I thought was so cool. Like, I just stumbled upon them. But in doing those challenges gave me a really cool upgrade, which is really, really neat. So, like, if you're one of those people, because some Metroidvanias don't really do that. Some Metroidvanias just want to they're not really good at rewarding exploration. Exploration. They kind of just or if you go off the beaten path, you may get coins or something. You may not get something rewarding. Well, rest assured, Dandara doesn't do that. This game is right full of it. And if you don't, you get salt, and salt is how you upgrade your weapons and and all your other upgrades. It's so worth exploring. But unfortunately, I did have some gripes with this game as I played it. This game is not perfect. There's no such thing as perfection in anything, obviously. I think the biggest problem I had with it is, even though I love the idea of how visually this world looks, sometimes when you enter a room, and you've probably, again, seen this already, the world map will turn, the visual map will turn to a certain angle, and that can be disorienting sometimes. And I would have been okay with that, visual change, if the map itself did a better job of telling you where you were specifically at. Thankfully, it's not that big of a deal, because the maps are very much the rooms you go into usually only have 1 or 2 exits. You kind of know, okay, I entered from here, I'm here, so I'm here now. But I think it would have made exploration and even backtracking a lot easier to go through and just more enjoyable for the player. There is a button that you can press that tells you where you're at, but it only tells you where you're at on the map. It doesn't tell you where specifically you are on the map. Am I closer to this door? Am I closer to this? Because there are, if you look at the map, and it'll show specific landmarks. I find that odd that you can't look at yourself specifically. And oh god. So and sometimes it's easy to get lost in this game. I feel like it's a bit of a problem. Like, sometimes I didn't know where I was going, and that's how I stumbled upon those. And so maybe that's, like, exploration is both good and bad. But the only other problem I have with it is I felt like sometimes the combat could get too clustered. Sometimes it becomes way too hectic and stressful to deal with combat situations, even in boss fights. Like, sometimes this game, especially towards the end, and I get it, it's the ending, it's supposed to be harder, but man, there are points where, like, I just wanted to quit the game because it felt like I was playing a bullet hell at certain points. Like, it just started to become unfun, and I was dying mostly not from taking enemy hits, but because I was landing where other enemies were landing. I'm like, this is... and they would throw enemies in one singular room, and it became a chore at points. It honestly became a chore at points, and I hate to say that, but it did. I think honestly, if they did something to mitigate that, and I don't know how you would do that, but it was a problem. It made me dread, like, big combat situations, and then, like, pray to Jesus that ultimately, oh my god, yes, I was able to overcome this. Yeah, I think that's about it in terms of, like, my problems that I had with the game. This, other than that, I think this game I think this game classifies under the mark of hidden gem. Personally, if you're looking for a Metroidvania game to play, but maybe you don't want something that's the standard experience, maybe you want something that's a little bit more bolder, maybe you want something that challenges you a bit, because trust me, this game will challenge you a lot, then I think you should give Dandara a shot. Honestly. Again, I don't think this is going to replace any games I've played within the genre to, like, it's not going to dethrone, like, Ori or Super Metroid, but I'm definitely going to put it up there as some of the most memorable ones I've played. Simply because of everything I mentioned, of its commitment to its design and storytelling. Again, minor complaints aside, it was a wonderful experience to go through. and I really want I want to champion this game a bit because I want people to play this experience because I think it's wonderful. I think it's kind of eye-opening because it combines the idea of the arts coming together to stop this authoritarianism, which again is very similar to what's going on right outside our windows. As terrifying as that is, that's really what's happening. And I think these are Brazilian developers, and you know, considering the corruption of the Brazilian government, sometimes they're probably right. They probably came from it from their perspective. In fact, like, you know, you can argue that some of the homes are like favelas, you know, a little bit. But I think that's gonna do it. Dandara was certainly a special experience. I'm very curious. Honestly, please let me know in the comments if you enjoyed this game, or if you plan on checking this game out, or if you don't, why not? Or also, if there are any other Metroidvania games that you've played that you don't think other people have played enough, please list them in the comments below. And of course, no matter what, guys, check always below for any kind of always check below for the description for my Twitter account, Charged Shot stuff, you know, my Twitch, which I stream every Thursday, every Sunday, and every Wednesday. So look for those for the appropriate time. But thank you all for listening. Thank you all for watching. But that's gonna do it for me. I'll see you all next time for my next video on the Outer Worlds. Until next time, stay marvelous. Have a good night, everybody.